All right, St. Andrew's family, it's Pastor Matt and Vicar Dan, and we have the pleasure of having Dr. David Christiansen with us here today. And Dr. David, usually you're behind the big the organ screen here, so I don't get to see you. So it's great to have you out in public and get to see your smiling face today.
Thank you.
We're trying something called Hymn Talks, where we're just going to talk a little bit about some of the hymns of the church. And you picked "Now Thank We All Our God" today, and it's hymn number 895 in the Lutheran hymn book. I think there's also a link on the broadcast notes too, if they want to check that out. But tell us about this song and what's interesting about it and why you picked it for today.
Well, thanks, Matt, and hello, everybody. It's a special joy for me to lead hymn singing here at St. Andrew's. So this is a lot of fun to talk about some of the hymns that we love. And Now Thank We All Our God certainly has to be one of them. First of all, just a little reminder, as you look at the link or you look at the hymnal, the title of the hymn, of course, is Now Thank We All Our God, and we see that it is written by Martin Rinkart, and we'll talk about him quite a bit today. That's the hymn, that's the poem. The music itself also has a name, and that's down in the lower right in capital letters, and you can see that it's Nun danket alle Gott, or Now All Thank God. So in other words, it's the beginning of the original German hymn. That hymn tune appears when we sing this hymn in our bulletins. You'll probably notice that in the information given on the hymn, at the end of that information is always something sometimes unintelligible in these capital letters, and that's known as the hymn tune, and it's the title of the hymn music itself. So there's our review for hymns, but now let's talk about mainly the text of this hymn by Martin Rinkart. He spent most of his ministry in his hometown of Eilenburg, Saxony, which is near Leipzig. And it was his hometown, and he wanted to go back, and he finally was able to do that as a pastor. And he spent 30 years there. Actually 32, because he started his ministry 1 year before the beginning of the 30 Years' War and died 1 year after the 30 Years' War was finished.
Wow.
So his timing was not good, but as we'll find out, God's timing was good in this case. I found some information about him on a website called hymnary.org. That's hymn with an A-R-Y on the end, and it's an interesting site to visit if you're interested in hymns. And so this tells us a little bit about Rinkart's life. During the horrors of the 30 Years' War, Eilenburg, his town, being a walled town, became a refuge for many from the surrounding area. And being so overcrowded, not unnaturally suffered from pestilence and famine. During the great pestilence of 1637, the town leader went away for a change of air and could not be persuaded to return. And on August 7th, Rinkart had to officiate at the funerals of 2 of the town clergy and 2 clergymen from the surrounding area, leaving him to be the only pastor in the area. He often read funeral services for over 40 to 50 people a day. In all, he read 4,480 funeral services.
Oh, my goodness.
Eventually, the refugees had to be buried in trenches without a service, and during the whole epidemic, 8,000 people in this small town died, including Rinkart's first wife. The next year, there was another epidemic, and Rinkart himself fell ill but recovered. Immediately after that, there was a severe famine, during which time Rinkart's resources were strained to the uttermost to help his people. Twice he saved Eilenburg from the Swedish army, which demanded excessive tribute from this impoverished town. Unfortunately, the services he rendered to the place seemed to have made those in authority more ungrateful, and in his latter years he was much harassed by them in financial and other matters. And by the time the long-looked-for peace came in 1648, he was a worn-out and prematurely aged man. Now, the guy who wrote the tune, Johann Kruger, he wrote this tune and 14 other tunes in our hymnal. He lost his wife and 5 children in the plague.
Oh, my goodness.
So does anyone have any complaints about social distancing? at this point?
Not at this point, no, sir. Yeah, my goodness.
So in the midst of this time of war and plague, famine, death, overwork, and personal problems, he wrote the words to this hymn. Let's take a look at those words. Now thank we all our God with hearts and hands and voices, who wondrous things has done, in whom this world rejoices, who from our mother's arms has blessed us on our way, in other words, our entire life, not just the easy times, with countless gifts of love, and still is ours today. Oh, may that bounteous God through all our life be near us, with ever joyful hearts and blessed peace to cheer us, and keep us in his grace and guide us when perplexed. And I've always been perplexed about that word perplexed because it seems so weak.
Yeah.
Well, the original German was maintain us forever and ever.
Huh.
But she needed to rhyme with and free us from all ills in this world and the next.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
there you go. And then the third stanza is Trinitarian and is usual in that particular way. So how could a man with such a life write something like this? I think we can look at St. Paul to give us a clue from Philippians 4. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God, and the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Wow, that's a beautiful explanation of this hymn, and I kind of see it in a whole new way now. And I love that first phrase you said. We thank God, but not just with our hearts and our voices, but also our hands.
Yeah.
That what we do is kind of a thanksgiving to God as well. As you look at this hymn, and we kind of talk about the styles of hymns, and there's different styles that come out of different eras of history. How would you describe the style of this hymn?
Yeah. It's kind of a later hymn in the category of a Lutheran chorale. We've heard of those terms, chorales, and those are early German Lutheran hymns. And they're usually marked with a certain amount of rhythmic excitement, which has been kind of ironed out as time has gone by. For example, A Mighty Fortress, the part we sing is very rhythmic compared to some other churches that sing a newer version that's been kind of ironed out rhythmically. And the same is true with this. Now thank we all our God, has that little bit of rhythm in there.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to Bach, which is later, you see that the rhythm's been ironed out. Now thank we all our God. So it's interesting that the earlier version was the more interesting version rhythmically.
That is really interesting.
And then it was just the style to kind of iron out tunes and make them a little more rhythmically similar.
So you're saying Lutherans are good at ironing excitement out of things.
Exactly right. But not the early Lutherans.
Not the early Lutherans. They were a pretty exciting group of people, it sounds like. Oh, man, I love this. Dan, any kind of thoughts about the hymn?
Yes.
Dr. Davis explained it?
Dr. Christiansen, can you explain to those watching what those little numbers underneath the tune in German mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's the poetic meter, which might sound complex, but all it is an outline of the number of syllables in each line of poetry. So now thank we all our God, 6, with hearts and hands and voices, 7, and so on.
Okay.
And maybe not this tune, but many tunes are of the same poetic meter, so that you could actually switch them out. For example, Amazing Grace and Joy to the World, you can switch those tunes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So if you want to sing Joy to the World, the Lord is come. Should we try that on Christmas?
I think we might get thrown out of church if we try that on Christmas.
So if you look at the metrical index and back, you'll see a bunch of them that can be interchangeable like that. And that's one reason I put the hymn tune name in the bulletin.
Okay.
Because it could be a different tune that we're singing that text to.
So if Lutherans like the words of a song, but they think the tune is too exciting, they can swap
Exactly
it
right, yeah.
They can swap it out for something less exciting. Oh, it sounds wonderful. Well, why don't we go ahead and sing the song? If you'd play for us, we'll sing together. Thank you so much, Dr. David Christiansen. Thanks so much, Vicar Dan, and thank you for tuning in. Hope we sing that song now and forever with the new appreciation of its history. Tune in next time. We have a hymn talk. We'll bring you some more exciting things to think about and pray about and have a devotion as we sing. Take care.